Revenge with Karen.
I knew the exact moment the company was dead. It wasn't when the stock dipped, and it wasn't when the CEO started wearing sneakers with a suit to look approachable. It was Tuesday, 10 o'clock a.m., during the all-hands engineering sync. I was sitting in my home office, surrounded by the hum of 3 monitors and the smell of stale coffee that had been heating on the warmer since 6 a.m. On the screen was a grid of 40 faces, engineers, product managers. The new guy, Derek. Derek was our new CTO. He looked like he was assembled in a factory that specialized in LinkedIn influencers and teeth-whitening accidents. He had been with us for 6 weeks, and in that time, he had used the word synergy more often than he had logged into our actual repository. He was 32, had a resume full of failed startups that he called learning experiences, and he treated me, 45-year-old woman who literally wrote the kernel this entire fintech platform ran on, like I was the office grandma who needed help converting a PDF. So, Derek said, leaning into his 4K webcam, flashing a smile that probably cost more than my first car. The legacy architecture. It's cute, it's quaint, but it's holding us back. We need to move fast. We need to break things. I unmuted. My voice is usually a low, flat rasp, result of 20 years in server rooms and a pack-a-day habit I kicked, but still miss every time a man interrupts me. Derek, I said, staring directly into the camera lens. If you break the transaction reconciliation module, you don't just break things. You lose client money. Specifically, about $4 million an hour. The latency issues aren't in the code. They're in the third-party APIs you insisted we patch in last week. The grid of faces went silent. Junior devs looked down. They knew. They'd seen the logs. They knew that my code, which I called the spine, was the only thing keeping this Frankenstein's monster of a platform from collapsing under its own weight. Derek's smile didn't falter, but his eyes got that shark-like deadness you see in people who think empathy is a weakness. He tapped his mouse. You have been muted by the host. A little gray icon appeared over my face. Thanks for the input, Sam, Derek said, dragging out my name like it was a slur. But let's keep the negativity to a minimum. We're brainstorming solutions here, not dwelling on the past. As I was saying, the new architecture will be entirely serverless. I sat there, frozen. My hand hovered over my mechanical keyboard, the Cherry MX switches waiting for command that would never come. He muted me. He silenced the architect in front of the bricklayers. Look, before I tell you how I systematically dismantled this man's life and career with the precision of a laser cutter, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It's cheaper than therapy, and frankly, knowing there are people watching the carnage keeps me warm at night. Done? Good. Let's proceed to the body count. I didn't try to unmute. I didn't wave my arms. I didn't type in the chat. I just watched him. I watched him pontificate about velocity and disruption, while the senior backend lead, a guy named Marcus who I'd trained from an intern, looked at me with eyes screaming I'm sorry. I picked up my phone. I didn't text the CEO. I didn't text HR. I opened my notes app and started a new file titled The Funeral. You want to break things, Derek? I whispered to my empty apartment, lighting a cigarette I had sworn I wouldn't smoke. Okay, let's see what happens when the things you break are load-bearing. The meeting ended. Derek logged off without a backward glance. I sat in the silence of my office, the smoke curling up toward the ceiling fan. He thought he had muted a noise complaint. He didn't realize he had just muted the safety alarm on a nuclear reactor. I opened a terminal window. The cursor blinked, a rhythmic, green heartbeat. I wasn't going to hack them. I wasn't going to do anything illegal. That's the thing about amateurs like Derek. They think power comes from job titles. Pros know power comes from the fine print, and I had a lot of fine print buried in a filing cabinet that no one had opened since 2014. I typed one command, git log author equals Derek. The output was empty. 0 commits, I muttered, taking a drag that burned pleasantly in my lungs. Perfect. 2 days later, the reorg email went out. You know the type. Heavy on corporate speak, light on logic. Streamlining operations, optimizing talent, aligning with strategic verticals. Translation. Samantha is being put out to pasture. I was summoned to a glass-walled meeting room called Innovation. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Derek was there, along with the VP of HR, a woman named Linda who smiled so much I suspected she was medicated. Sam, Derek started, clasping his hands on the table, wasn't wearing a tie, but his shirt was unbuttoned to a degree that suggested he thought he was at a club in Miami, not a fintech firm in the state. We feel your specific skill set is better suited for new initiative. New initiative? I asked, keeping my face blank. I've practiced this face in the mirror. It's the I'm listening, but I'm also planning your autopsy face. Documentation and compliance, Derek said, beaming. Need someone to really dig into the legacy code and document every single function before we deprecate it. You know where the bodies are buried, so to speak. He laughed at his own joke. Linda laughed too, a tinkling sound that grated on my nervous system. They were turning me into a librarian. They were taking the architect of the entire system, the woman who stayed up for 72 hours straight during the Series B crash to rewrite the database sharding logic, telling her to write instruction manuals for the idiots who were replacing her. I see, I said slowly. So, no more active development. No more commit access to the production environment. Exactly, Derek said, looking relieved. He thought I was going to fight. He thought I was going to scream about my tenure. We want you to focus on the legalities, the history. Compliance, I repeated. That involves licensing audits, right? Sure, Derek waved a hand dismissively. Whatever falls under that bucket. I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. I looked Derek in the eye, and for a second I saw him flinch. He was a predator, but he was a house cat. I was a wolf that had been domesticated against its will. Okay, I said, I'll take the role. Derek blinked. Really, that's great. That's a team player attitude, Sam. I just want what's best for the platform, I said, and I meant it. The best thing for the platform was to excise the cancer. I walked back to my desk, the open plan office buzzing around me. The junior devs avoided eye contact. They felt guilty. They were young, hungry, and terrified of Derek's volatility. I didn't blame them. I packed my personal items, a picture of my dog, a stress ball shaped like a grenade, and a framed award from 2015 that said Employee of the Year. I went home and opened the safe in my closet. Inside, buried under birth certificates and tax returns, was a thick folder. See, back when I joined this company, it wasn't a company. It was 3 guys in a garage and me. They couldn't afford my salary, so I negotiated a different deal. I created a separate LLC, Ironback Systems, and I licensed the core architecture to the startup. It was a standard lease agreement. The code belongs to Ironback. The startup pays a yearly fee for the right to use it. As the company grew, the founders got bought out. The VCs came in. Paperwork got shuffled, digitized, and forgotten. The yearly fee was small, peanuts really, so it just got auto-paid by accounts payable as vendor services. But there was a clause on page 14. Clause 7, B, modification rights. In the event of unauthorized modification of the source code by non-certified personnel, without express written consent from Ironback Systems, the licensee forfeits rights to the software, effective immediately upon notice. Derek had just revoked my commit access. He had assigned a team of outsourced contractors, non-certified personnel, to rewrite my code. I poured a glass of whiskey. Cheap stuff, burns the throat. I opened my laptop and logged into the Ironback admin portal, a server running quietly in a data center in Virginia that monitored the heartbeat of the startup system. Compliance, I toasted to the empty room. You want compliance, Derek. I'm going to give you so much compliance you'll choke on it. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in entropy. Derek hired a dev shop called Code Rocket. I looked them up. Their website had more stock photos of people high-fiving than actual case studies. They were based in a time zone that ensured no one was ever awake at the same time, and their GitHub commits looked like they were written by an AI that had been fed nothing but Red Bull and regret. I sat in my compliance role watching the repo. It was like watching someone graffiti over the Mona Lisa with a Sharpie. They started bypassing my safety checks. They disabled the load balancer to increase throughput. They hard-coded API keys directly into the source code. Marcus, the backend lead, DM'd me on Slack. Marcus, Sam, you seeing this? They're ripping out the scheduler logic. Derek says it's blocking velocity. Me, I see it. Marcus, if traffic spikes over 10K RPS, the database is going to lock up. You need to tell him. He won't listen to me. I looked at the message. I felt that old twitch, the instinct to jump in to fix it, to save the day. That's what women in tech are trained to do, clean up the mess, smooth over the ego, make the magic happen invisibly. Not this time. Me, I'm in compliance now, Marcus. My job is to document. Submit a ticket. Marcus, Sam, ease me, submit. A ticket. I logged the conversation, screenshot, saved to encrypted folder. The first crack appeared on a Thursday, a small latency spike. Customers complained that their dashboard was loading slowly. Derek posted in the Hash General channel, growing pains. This means we're scaling. Great work, Code Rocket team. Rocket, I printed that Slack message. I added it to the physical file on my desk. Then came the optimization update. Derek announced they were pushing a major refactor of the core transaction engine to production on Friday night. No downtime deployment, he promised the CEO. I read the code they were about to push. It was a suicide note written in Python. They had removed the concurrency locks. In layman's terms, if two people tried to move money at the same time, the system wouldn't know which one happened first. It would try to do both, or neither, or it would just set the money on fire. I had a choice. I could stop it. I could invoke Clause 7, be right then and there. But I needed him to pull the trigger. If I stopped him now, he'd spin it. He'd say I was obstructing progress. He'd blame me for the missed opportunity. No, the crash had to be his. The ashes had to have his fingerprints all over them. I drafted an email to Derek, CCing the CEO and legal. Subject: Risk Assessment Friday Deployment. Derek, per my review of the proposed changes for the Friday release, I have identified critical vulnerabilities in the transaction reconciliation layer. Removing concurrency locks violates the data integrity standards outlined in our banking charter. This poses a high risk of data corruption and financial loss. Regards, Samantha Compliance Officer. I hit send. 7 minutes later, Derek replied. Reply all. Sam, thanks for the concern. Let's not get bogged down in what-ifs. We've run simulations. The new architecture handles this natively. We need to stop thinking in fear and start thinking in scale. The deployment proceeds. I stared at the screen, native handling. He was using buzzwords to cover up a knowledge gap the size of the Grand Canyon. Okay, Derek, I whispered. You got it. I went to my closet. I pulled out my Ironback Systems letterhead. I drafted a formal invoice. Item: annual licensing renewal plus penalty for unauthorized modification. Status: overdue. Action: service suspension pending. I didn't send it yet. I set a scheduler on my private server. Execute at Monday, 8 o'clock a.m. EST. Why Monday? Because the weekend would be slow. The errors would creep in silently like termites. But Monday morning is when the markets open. Monday morning is when the volume hits. I closed my laptop. I went to the fridge and threw out the kale salad I had bought to be healthy. I ordered a greasy pizza with extra pepperoni. If I was going to watch the world burn, I wasn't going to do it on an empty stomach. Friday night. The war room at the office was stocked with craft beer and artisan tacos. I saw the photos on Instagram. Derek was standing on a table, holding a bottle of champagne, surrounded by the Code Rocket guys who had flown in for the launch. Looked like a frat house that had accidentally acquired a server farm. I was at home, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt that said I survived Y2K, and all I got was this panic disorder. At 9 o'clock p.m., they pushed the button. My phone didn't buzz. I had removed myself from the pager duty rotation. For the first time in 10 years, if the server crashed, my phone wouldn't scream. It was a phantom limb sensation, waiting for the pain that didn't come. I watched the dashboard on my private monitor. 9:05 p.m., deployment successful. 9:10 p.m., traffic normal. Wait for it, I told the dog. He looked at me with concern. He sensed the malice radiating off me. Saturday morning, 10 o'clock a.m., I checked the logs, a few 500 errors, nothing major. Just a few dropped packets here and there. The kind of noise you ignore if you're incompetent. But then I saw it. Duplicate entry errors in the database logs. Transaction ID hash 99821, processed. Transaction ID hash 99821, processed. It was happening. The double spend issue. The system was debiting accounts twice, or crediting them twice, or just losing the record entirely. It was a trickle now. But come Monday, when the automated trading bots woke up, it would be a tsunami. Could have called Marcus. I could have told him to roll back. But then I remembered the Zoom call, the mute button, the smirk. I went to the grocery store. I bought wine. I bought good cheese. I bought a pack of Marlboro Lights, smoked one in the parking lot, and coughed until my eyes watered. It tasted like college and bad decisions. Sunday, the errors were compounding. The customer support queue, which I still had read access to, was starting to tick up. Hey, why does my balance show negative $400? My deposit didn't go through, but the money is gone from my bank. Derek posted a photo of himself on a boat, unplugging after a massive win. Hash life at the top, hash tech life. He wasn't even checking the logs. He assumed deployment successful meant everything works. He didn't understand that software is a living thing, and he had just injected it with poison. Sunday night, 11 o'clock p.m. I sat at my desk. The glow of the screens illuminated my face in a ghostly blue. I opened the Ironback Systems admin panel. My finger hovered over the command line. The script was simple. It verified the license key on the company's servers. If the key was invalid, which I was about to make it, the core modules would encrypt themselves. It was a dead man's switch I had built in 2011 to protect against IP theft. I wasn't hacking them. I was repossessing my property. Set the timer. Monday, 8:55 a.m. 5 minutes before the market opens. I went to bed. I slept like a baby who had just planted C4 under the crib. Monday morning broke with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I woke up at 7 o'clock a.m., made coffee, and sat on my balcony. The city was waking up. People were rushing to jobs they hated, unaware that a small corner of the financial sector was about to melt down. 8 o'clock a.m. Slack notifications started. I had muted them, but the badges were ticking up. 10, 50, 100. I opened the app but didn't log in. I just watched the preview text on the lock screen. Marcus, guys, we have a major issue with the ledger. Dev 2, the database is locking up. Queries are timing out. Support lead, phones are ringing off the hook. Where's everyone? 8:30 a.m. Derek was finally tagged. CEO, at Derek we have a situation. Clients are reporting missing funds. Get on this. No reply from Derek. He was probably flying back from his boat trip, or maybe he was just hungover. 8:55 a.m. My script executed. On the company servers, the Ironback core modules, the ones handling the secure handshakes and the data encryption, received the signal. License expired. Integrity compromised. Lockdown initiated. Suddenly, the errors changed. Went from database timeout to access denied. The entire platform didn't just slow down, it froze. It locked. It became a digital brick. 9 o'clock a.m. Markets opened. The trading bots hit the API. 403 forbidden. 403 forbidden. 403 forbidden. The hash general channel turned into a screaming match. CEO, the system is down. We are losing millions. Derek, answer your phone. Finally, at 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed, not a Slack message. A call from the CEO, I let it go to voicemail. Then a text from Marcus, Sam, the logs say license expired. What is happening? The whole backend is encrypted. We can't access the source code. I took a sip of coffee. It was a dark roast, nutty with a hint of chocolate. I finally logged into Slack. I set my status to compliance review. Derek, finally online. What the F is happening? Who touched the permissions? Me. Good morning. Everyone, I see there's some confusion. The channel stopped moving. Everyone was reading. Derek, Sam, did you do this? Fix it now, me. I didn't do anything, Derek. The system detected unauthorized code modification by non-certified personnel. Per the Ironback Systems Licensing Agreement, Clause 7. B. The software has entered protective mode to prevent data corruption, which, judging by the logs, was already happening thanks to your optimization. Derek, what licensing agreement? We own the code. Me, actually, you lease it, and the lease just got voided. I uploaded the PDF of the 2011 contract, the one signed by the original founders, the one legal had on file but Derek had never bothered to read. Me, I'd suggest you get legal on the line, and probably your checkbook. Then I went offline. At 9:45 a.m., I sent a Zoom link to the CEO, the General Counsel, and Derek. Subject, remediation strategy. I waited in the digital lobby for a full 2 minutes before letting them in. A power move. When the screens popped up, the contrast was beautiful. The CEO, a guy named Robert who usually looked like he slept in a suit, was pale. He was in his office, people running around in the background. The lawyer, Sarah, looked terrified. She had the contract open on her screen. She knew I had them dead to rights. And Derek. Derek was in an airport lounge. The connection was grainy. He was sweating. Visibly, profusely sweating. Samantha, Robert said, his voice tight. We are bleeding out here. Turn it back on. I can't just turn it back on, Robert, I said, leaning back in my gaming chair. The license is terminated. To reactivate it, I'd need to issue a new license key. That requires a new contract. This is extortion. Derek shouted. The audio clipped. People in the airport lounge turned to look at him. She sabotaged us. I'm going to sue you for everything you own. Derek, I said, my voice dropping to that icy register. You muted me. You ignored my risk assessment. You violated the terms of service of the core infrastructure. You deployed unstable code that double-debited client accounts. If I hadn't triggered the lockdown, the SEC would be knocking on your door by noon for fraud. I didn't sabotage you. I saved you from federal prison. Sarah, the lawyer, cleared her throat. She has a point, Robert. The protective mode actually stopped the data corruption from spreading. Technically, she mitigated the damages. Derek looked like he was going to vomit. She's a disgruntled employee. I'm a vendor, I corrected. And you're a delinquent client. Robert rubbed his temples. He looked at Derek, then at the screen where the stock price was plummeting. How much? Robert asked. Reactivation? I asked. Or for the consulting fee to fix the mess Derek made? Both, Robert snapped. Just give me a number. I looked at the sticky note on my monitor where I had done the math. Outstanding licensing fees for the last 3 years, plus the penalty for breach of contract, plus an emergency consulting retainer. I named a number. It was a phone number with an area code. Derek gasped. That's insane. That's half our Q3 budget. It's cheaper than bankruptcy, I said, and it's cheaper than the lawsuit from the clients whose money you lost. Robert didn't hesitate. He didn't look at Derek. He looked at me. If I wire this, is it fixed? If you wire it, I said, I decrypt the core. Then I roll back Derek's update. Then I restore the database from the backup I personally made on Friday night because I knew this clown would crash the car. Robert closed his eyes. He exhaled. Send the wire instructions. Robert, Derek pleaded. Can't let her win? Robert opened his eyes. He looked at the grainy video of his CTO in an airport lounge. Shut up, Derek. You're done? Mute yourself. I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled all day. I pasted the wire instructions into the chat. Ironback Systems LLC. Routing number. Account number. It's being processed, Robert said. He was typing on another screen. Sarah is approving the emergency disbursement. We sat in silence. The only sound was the airport announcements in Derek's background. Flight 492 to San Francisco is now boarding. You should probably get on that plane, Derek, I said helpfully. It's a long walk home. He glared at me, but he didn't speak. He was muted. 10 minutes passed. My phone pinged. A notification from my bank. Incoming wire transfer, $2,450,000 and 0 cents. I checked the balance. Looked like a phone number. It was beautiful. Received, I said. I shared my screen, not the camera, the terminal. I wanted them to see it. I typed in the decryption key. It was 64 characters long. I had it memorized. Key accepted. Decrypting volume. The progress bar filled up. Green. Then I ran the rollback script. Git revert head git reset hard origin / stable backup Friday. The terminal flew with text. Lines of code scrolling faster than the eye could read. I watched the timestamps. I watched the integrity checks. Database restoration initiating. I narrated like a surgeon explaining a procedure to a med student. Scrubbing the duplicate transactions. Reconciling the ledger against the Friday snapshot. It took 12 minutes. 12 minutes where the company's fate hung on my typing speed. Finally, the output stopped. System status, online. Integrity, 100%. Check the dashboard, I said. Robert looked away from the Zoom. I could hear the shouts in the background through his microphone. It's up, we're back. The balances are correcting. Robert slumped in his chair. He looked 10 years older than he had at 9:00 a.m. Thank you, Samantha, he whispered. Don't thank me, I said, reaching for my pack of cigarettes. Thank the legacy code you tried to kill. I looked at Derek Square one last time. He was staring at the floor of the airport lounge. Oh, and Robert, I said, my consulting rate just went up. Double time for weekends and holidays, and I consider every day I have to deal with Derek a holiday. Robert didn't even look at Derek. Derek won't be a problem, Robert said. He's resigning, effective immediately. Derek's head snapped up. What? You heard me, Robert said. Send your badge back via FedEx. I stopped sharing my screen. Pleasure doing business with you, I said. And I ended the call. Next hour was a blur of dopamine and nicotine. I didn't go back to work. I didn't answer the hundreds of DMs from the engineering team asking how did you do that? Or are you a wizard? I was done. I watched the Slack channels from a distance, like a god watching mortals panic. Derek's account was deactivated at 11:30 a.m. His messages remained, little monuments to his stupidity, but his profile picture turned into a generic gray silhouette. Vision documents he had created were deleted from the shared drive. The code Rocket guys were fired by noon. Robert sent out an all-hands email at 1:00 p.m. Subject, leadership changes and system stability. It was vague. Technical difficulties resolved. Strategic realignment. Derek has decided to pursue other opportunities, but the engineers knew. Marcus sent me one last text. Marcus, you're a legend. They're calling it the Samantha event. Nobody is allowed to push code without your approval anymore. Robert made it a policy. I chuckled. I didn't want approval power. I didn't want to be the gatekeeper. I wanted out. I drafted my resignation letter. It was short. To Robert from Samantha subject. Resignation, Robert. Per our earlier conversation, the system is stable. My work here is done. Iron Back Systems will continue to license the core architecture to you, subject to the new fee schedule we discussed. I will be retaining external administrative access to ensure compliance. I am resigning from my full-time position effective immediately. Good luck finding a new CTO. I suggest you look for someone who knows how to code. Regards, Sam. I hit send. I felt lighter. The weight of the failing platform, the weight of the disrespect, the weight of being the invisible woman, it all evaporated. I logged out of Slack, logged out of email. I wiped the company data from my laptop, leaving only my proprietary tools. I walked into my living room. The sun was streaming in. The dust motes danced in the light. I looked at the Employee of the Year award I had packed in the box. I threw it in the trash. I didn't need a plaque. I had a wire transfer. It's been 3 months since the Red Monday. The company is still running. They pay my licensing fee on the 1st of every month. Automatic transfer. No questions asked. They hired a new CTO, a woman. She's 50. She used to work at IBM. She called me once to introduce herself. She was respectful. She asked for permission to modify a subroutine. I granted it. Derek, I looked him up the other day. He's listing himself as a visionary consultant on LinkedIn. He posted a long, rambling article on Medium about how corporate politics stifle innovation. It got 3 claps. Word on the street is he's trying to pivot to crypto. Good luck with that, buddy. The blockchain doesn't have a mute button. As for me, I bought a cabin in the woods, no neighbors, just me, the dog, and a satellite internet connection that is surprisingly fast. I still code, but I code for me. I'm building a new kernel, something faster, something cleaner. And every now and then, I get a ping on my encrypted server. Someone trying to poke around the iron back architecture. I just smile and watch the firewall eat them alive. Tonight, I'm drinking the expensive wine, the stuff that doesn't burn. I have a Danny DeVito Asmer video playing in the background. It's him eating an egg. It's strangely soothing. I checked my bank account balance again. It's still there. They thought they could erase me. They thought they could replace me with a slide deck and a smile. They forgot the first rule of engineering. Hardware eventually fails. Software eventually rots. The architect is forever. So, to all the Dereks out there, listening to this while you drive your leased BMWs to jobs you're unqualified for, be careful who you mute. You might just be muting the only person who knows how to keep the plane in the air. And when you're falling from the sky and you're frantically smashing buttons, praying for a miracle, don't bother calling me. My rates just went up again. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.